Donald, do you find your fantasy stories all seem rather similar? Like they all have the same inspiration?
Boy, do I, David. Every time I try to write a fantasy story, I get caught in a trap made of mithril and shelob webs. No matter how hard I try, I always end up using elves, dwarves, dragons, knights, magical jewelry, and precious-grabbing gray goblin-like goons. There's gotta be a better way.
There certainly is, Donald. Many writers like you fall into the same trap when writing fantasy, but no longer will you be a halfling caught in a giant's den. Introducing the De-Tolkienifier, the device that sucks out all the obvious Tolkien ripoffs from your fantasy story and creates a more original, less derivative piece of writing.
Whoa, that's so cool! I mean, Tolkien was an amazing writer and came up with an amazing world, but it's too easy to just take all of his ideas rather than come up with new stuff.
Indeed it is. For many fantasy writers, there's one type of story to rule them all, that in the darkness binds them. That's where the De-Tolkienifier comes in, clearing your stories of the ripoffs and replacing them with newer, fresher material.
But how does it work? One does not simply yank the Tolkien-inspired elements out of a fantasy story.
I'm glad you asked. Here are some fellow writers whom this incredible device has aided.
Hi, I'm a typical teenage fantasy writer. Originally, my story suffered from the same Tolkien-inspired elements like elves and dwarves, but one quick use of the Tolkienifier replaced them with magical elemental spirits and pint-sized iron automatons. Immediately, my story seemed so much more successful in its ambition. I was no longer struggling in the trappings of Tolkienism.
Hey man, I'm a New Zealand filmmaker. Ever since I directed a Tolkien-inspired trilogy of movies, I've been stuck creatively trying to come up with something new. Thanks to the De-Tolkienifier, I've directed monster movies and dramas about death that nobody's seen, and I gotta say, I feel like a new Kiwi.
Whoa, that's so cool! I'm getting the De-Tolkienifier right away! Now I can come up with something new. Ooh, what if instead I wrote a story about dinosaurs with laser guns?
Well, that, certainly isn't a Tolkien ripoff, but, that might be a bit much still.
You're probably right.
The De-Tolkienifier, keeping readers everywhere from being bored of the rings.
Welcome, fellow nerds, to another episode of The Writ, the show where two writers who are definitely better than you prattle on endlessly about dinosaurs and superheroes and sometimes writing, who knows?
Well, I mean, you're not wrong.
Yeah. Oh man, this podcast.
So professional.
That's our motto, other than us two twits talking about writing in a professional and timely manner.
Very professional. Anyway. Well, we're more timely. Just to recap, listeners coming to us, why is there another episode out so soon? We talked about a new format last time. Go back and listen to that again. But we're here this week.
We're doing it. We're doing a weekly thing, different topics for every 4 weeks. And this one, we're talking about the alignment system. And as we mentioned last time, we're not going to do what we at the Writ have writ or what will we rip off in this month at every episode. We did our what we will rip off from this month last episode, and we'll do what will we at the Writ have writ for next episode.
You're absolutely right, which means we don't have a normal segment to fill. Maybe we need to make one. But for now, we don't. So let's move on.
Here's our normal segment. Matt picks his nose.
Oh my God!
Which Matt? Yes. Did you pick your nose, David?
Just keep in mind.
I'm picking mine.
Just keep in mind, it could be both.
Oh, there's a booger in here. It's really big. All right, that's the end of our new segment. Matt picks his nose.
Oh my God. You know, one of these times, if we do that consistently, I'll end up giving myself a bloody nose, and I will so not like you for that.
Don't pick it that hard. You take everything seriously, even if it's the Matt picks his nose segment.
Anyways.
Okay, now that we've done our classic segment we do every week.
Now that we've done our classic filler, yeah.
We've defilled our noses. So.
Alright, but we're back to the alignment system. So this week, you might be able to tell from the title that we're going to be talking about how to write good and neutral alignments, whether they're lawful, chaotic, or whatever.
Out of the 9 types of characters that we talked about last time on the alignment grid, we're going to do 5 of them. Lawful good up to true neutral.
Correct. Wait, that's Oh, okay, got it. We're going to do 5. For some reason, I thought it was 6. No, it is only 5. You're right.
So
sorry.
No worries. I'm leaving that in, but no, or maybe I am.
maybe you will.
We'll find out.
We will see. We will see. This is
anyways. So we shall start with, as we did last time, with Lawful Good.
Sure.
And these are hard for me. They're too boring. Well, but they can also be fun, I guess, when they're done in kind of an antagonistic sort of way, even though they're good. Like, the relationship between a lawful good and a chaotic good is often quite interesting.
That is true. I do want to throw something out.
Like, if there are two
maybe
characters
if you're having trouble with lawful...
Way,
yeah. Right. No, I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
With lawful good characters, it's almost kind of better if they're not the main protagonist. Like, if they're a deuteragonist, if they're somebody that's there as a side character, then it's probably okay. You know, if they don't need as much character development. But, like, when we talked about classifying heroes in... What episode was it?
I don't know.
Oh my god, I stumped you!
Hold on, I'm going to go look at my list of episodes on the website.
So professional! That's okay, I called that up pretty suddenly.
Types of Heroes, episode 27.
Anyway, so yeah, when we talked about the perfect, you know...
Yes.
There's not much growth room for these characters because they're, I mean, how do you improve on somebody who's already upstanding citizen of law, follows the rules, you know, does work for the greater good, stuff like that. However, one source of conflict that you might use is having the law be kind of weird, but they follow it anyway without really thinking.
Yes. Well, like, I think a good difference between this and, like, neutral is that if you uphold all these laws and honors and such, it sets a proper example for others.
True.
This is why, and I guess we'll get to this in another episode, Superman is a great example because he's the ideal to strive towards.
Fair.
That's what he tries to be for humans. So,
one thing we should mention before we go too much further, a lot of our research has been culled from 2 different sources.
Yes, we should also mention
Donald is using TV tropes. I am using a site called Easy Damas. The alignment system originally came from D&D, and so this site that I'm using is a guide for, you know, DMs, players, etc., and about, you know, working on your characters and whatnot. Of course, TV tropes talks about cliches through all kinds of media, so they have a pretty decent section on alignment as well.
Yes.
So we will probably quote things from there. If you want more information, go to those places. We'll have links in the description as well.
Mainly, I'm going to keep the links to the description in the first episode of the set, so... Just
to not make
it
so
too
you have to go
cluttered.
back
So go to that.
You'll have to go episode 30 of the Writ Ding! To find that.
Indeed.
So, one thing that I did get through in my research, though, and I want to share this with all of our listeners,
of course,
is there is something on the website about how this alignment, fill in the blank, is the best. How this alignment is the most dangerous, or could ostensibly be read as the worst.
Right.
So, since we're talking about lawful good, we'll start there. The best thing about lawful good characters, they combine honor with compassion.
Yes. Absolutely. They're the ones that, like... I don't know. I'm tired.
There are some... there was a psychologist. I'm mentioning this now because I'll probably reference it throughout the rest of these as well. There was a psychologist by the name of Schwartz. I can't remember his first name. Who established that there are 10 motivations for anybody.
Yes.
10 motivations. And if you want to, you could superimpose these motivations over the alignment chart, whether it's a ring model or whether it's the typical grid, although it works better if it's a ring. However, I'm going to go ahead and read those off, and these kind of stand on their own, so hopefully you don't need too much more explanation, but again, if you do, please take a look at Easy Damas. I'm sure
yes.
they do quote their research too. For lawful good, the motivations are conformity, tradition, and benevolence.
Makes sense. So
you find these characters on the quote-unquote path of integrity.
Yes. So this is more, I guess, defining it as well. These are all more defining it. So I guess how would you write that? Like, if you had a character who was lawful good, yeah, I think you.
Well, again, as I said earlier, if you enable some conflict, like internal conflict between what seems sensible to the rest of their party versus what the law says.
Yeah. Like
you could mine that for an example.
Well,
but yeah, there isn't much room for them to like grow throughout your story unless it's like challenging them to go away from that alignment.
Well, one thing I did, so in my third Megazoic book, The Hunted Ones, buy on Amazon.com, there's one of the big conflict is between Quinn and Cortan. While Quinn is not the main antagonist of the book, she is indirectly a antagonist in some ways. For some of it. I guess I'm trying not to spoil it. I guess it's kind of a spoiler, but
you know what? You know, it'd be really funny if we had like a siren sound effect for spoilers.
We need that all the time.
But like, no, I'm serious. Like, we've got the foghorn for the future stuff. We got a siren for spoiler.
Okay, fine.
We got the ding for
spoilers incoming.
Something like that. Yeah.
Okay.
Anyway,
so Quinn is the lawful good. Cortan is the chaotic good.
Sure.
Their relationship throughout it, like their struggle, is a majority of the conflict. I'm not going to say what happens or why, but...
So we didn't need the spoiler siren?
Yeah, but the siren's going away. It passed by. We don't need to worry about it.
Passed by.
Someone else's problem. Okay, so...
I mean, okay.
So what I did with this, the conflict was resolved not by the lawful good character becoming less lawful good, but by the two of them coming to a compromise.
All right.
That's the way that arc was resolved. That's the growth that the lawful good character went through. She kind of figured out that she didn't have to go quite as far as she did, but she still upholds the law. She just learns to compromise.
I quoted this last episode, but again, to throw it out, few people are completely consistent when it comes to alignment.
Yes.
So. One thing I do want to throw out, and I love this line, quote, "It is not a straitjacket for restricting your character," close quote.
Makes sense.
So, I mean, obviously, when you're playing D&D, which of course is the whole thing, you know, players try to wrestle with, but I want this character to do the lawful good thing in it, so it absolutely can limit them if they're not careful with it.
Yeah.
And there's a thing in the D&D play, I mean, obviously every single game is different, but there's a thing during the session that you can have what are called alignment checks.
That's a good
So
thing.
if you do something, the DM, the dungeon master, can say, well, you did this. Does it fit your alignment? Do we need to change you on the scale such that your alignment is no longer the same?
Right.
There's a lot more information on that at Easy Domus, and I don't know D&D well enough because...
I really should have brought Lexi along to do these episodes. She plays D&D. If you want to hear more of her, listen to episode 24 of The Ritwit. Ding!
Full disclaimer, I have not played D&D, but I do know quite a few people who have, and they always talk about it as a fun experience. So, you know, at some point, maybe, if I have the chance. Mm-hmm. However, point being that, you know, the actions they make can have a lasting impact on the alignment.
Right.
Now, I'm not saying that Quen's alignment or Cortan's alignment in this example that explicitly changed.
Yes.
But it could.
Yes.
So if you're having trouble with a character, challenge them.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's the whole point.
Force them to make decisions.
What makes conflict so fun. It's a challenge. It's a struggle. They have to overcome. They have to work for it. So
the alignment is a guideline rather than a script. So it's not like you have to always follow this path in order. You can improv. You can find a diverging path and go with that. It works. That's the point. You mind those differences. But there's also the reverse, which is somebody working towards lawful good. And if they work towards lawful good, to work towards the ideal of Superman, it's actually quite fun to write.
That makes sense.
I think.
Yeah, well, I think so too. Yeah, so let's see. I'm trying to think. Is there anything else we need to talk about in terms of writing lawful good? Any more tipperoonies?
No, I've already said my piece. You got anything?
Nope. All right. So
we'll move on to neutral good.
Yes, these are just the guys that try to do, like as we said last time, these are the guys that just do good just for the do good. So these are probably the easiest to write out of all the good ones. So,
well, I mean, if
actually,
you look at somebody who's lawful neutral, they view themselves as both honorable and realistic. Sometimes, excuse me, we're not talking about lawful neutral.
Yeah,
right now,
why do you keep going
fault.
down there to lawful neutral? We're going to neutral good.
We're going to neutral good. I'm sorry, I'm following the wrong axis. Neutral good people view themselves as practical and humane. So they're still good to other people, but, you know, if the law doesn't allow them, but it makes common sense for them to do, they'll do it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think these guys are the easiest to write out of all of them, just because they're just naturally good guys. They just do good, and they don't worry about it. Like, these are the heroes. These are like the typical heroes. Like these are the Luke Skywalkers, the Frodo Baggins. We'll get to that, but these are the ones.
But for neutral good, why is it a good alignment?
Why is it?
They're capable of doing. They're capable of doing good, quote unquote good, without a bias for or against order.
Yes.
It can be bad because sometimes this means that they're advancing mediocrity as a concept because they're limiting the actions of the truly capable people.
Right. I don't really think we need much tips on how to define, like, how to write this, I don't think. It's pretty straightforward.
Yeah. But that's why I wanted to speak my piece before we went away from it.
Of course. That's anything I say.
Their motivations, benevolence, and universalism.
Right. Like, these are just good guys. Just guys on this you want to hang out with. Guys you want to have a beer with, you know? Guys you just...
I honestly
the guys who would probably
you
get you a
that they're
beer,
the heroes.
buy it up for you.
You mentioned that they're the heroes, but honestly, I would kind of have more fun casting them as the secondary guys.
You know, that's true too. In fact, actually, in Megazoic, I think Bellar, the main best friend of the main character, is this. While Cortan he's chaotic good. Well, that's kind of what I went for him.
And you notice that with those three main characters, that you span all of good, and so their relations to each other is kind of, it includes that.
Well, that's why I had a lot of fun with the third Megazoic book, Hunted Ones, buy on Amazon.com. Ding.
Ding. Second time.
Because the struggle was between Cortan and Quinn. Now, Bellar is Cortan's best friend.
Caught in the middle.
But also Quinn's boyfriend. And they're really
boyfriend
serious. Like, he wants to marry her.
Oh, okay, still boyfriend. Right. Sorry, I had to remember that.
What?
Sorry, I had to remember what stage their relationship was at.
Yeah, no,
I didn't say anything about whether it ended up.
Yeah, no, it's serious at this point. So Bellar is really, really struggling in this book too. Seeing the two
caught in the middle.
These two dinosaurs. I'm about to say people. These two dinosaurs. He cares about the most against each other.
Would that be a Freudian slip, my friend?
Yeah, basically just more proof that the humans and dinosaur clothes, but...
Yep. Anyways, so we don't really have any tipperoonies for neutral good because they kind of write themselves. They're inherently nice people, and so there really aren't too many problems to work with. Obviously, their relations to other people where you can find conflict.
That's interesting. Like, that kind of thing to me, that's the interesting part. Like, a lot of these are interesting, too, with just how they relationship with other characters, how they relationship.
Well, sure. I mean, obviously... That's the point. Contrasting them against other aligned characters is where you can mine more story drama. So go for it in your own words.
Yes.
Speaking of going for it, can we go on?
Going for it. And speaking of going for it, no matter what, well, I guess we're talking about... These are so forced.
Now you know how I feel.
That's great. I love it. Chaotic good. Chaotic good. How do you write chaotic good? They're just... They do what they want. They do as they please. I think probably the biggest struggle between this is trying to find the line, the difference between chaotic good and chaotic neutral. Or evil, even. It's just like, if you have a character who just does whatever they want, it could end up going...
I suppose if you want to help with that, I would say that good and evil is kind of... The difference between... being good or neutral is more your thing, is what your intention is.
Yes.
What your intention is. The way you go about it is between law and chaos.
Right. You're like these.
So if you're aiming for the good of multiple people, be they dinosaurs, animals, or otherwise, that theoretically you're a good character and you just happen to go operate outside the law.
Yeah.
But if you're chaotic neutral, you're doing what's more in your own interests and not for the good of anyone.
That's true.
Particularly unless it's yourself.
Like, yeah, the chaotic goods are the people who, like, they're like whatever, I don't care what the rules are. I'm doing what's right. This is what has to be done.
One thing that's good about this alignment, by the way, is they combine a good heart with a free spirit.
Yes.
So their intentions are pure. Their methods may be a little questionable.
Yes.
In some cases. Their choices, they have to make really hard choices. So try and get into the meat of that choice. Why are they going this way? Is it something that's natural for them, or do they really struggle to make it happen and live with the consequences of that?
I think chaotic good is it's a pretty... There's a lot of different things you can do with it within this one thing. Like, in one end, you got, like, the Robin Hoods, the guy who have a purpose in doing what they do. But on the other hand, you could have just, like, the fairies, who are just like, wee, I do what I want, wee, and it's fun, I don't care what you do, but it's wee. You know, it's two different characters within the same alignment.
True. One thing I do want to mention here, because we're kind of talking about a little bit more about degrees. With the grid, it's pretty straightforward. You've got a 3x3 setup, and the alignments are basically cardinal directions, if you will.
Yes.
There are other models for the alignment chart, and one of the ones I saw that I really liked was Ring. I mentioned it last episode as well. I already mentioned it earlier, I think, too. The Ring model talks about it as if you can, well, walk around the clock between alignments, right?
Where does true neutral fit on that, though?
True neutral's in the center.
Right, but I guess you can't go through it on a ring, though, but...
No, you can't go through it on the ring, but you can, you can go towards true neutral within an alignment.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
I guess it's a full circle,
and so,
then.
like,
okay. It's not...
Yeah, it is a full circle.
It's not necessarily...
It's not like a helix.
It's not an outline. It's the full circle, okay.
No, it's the full circle.
Got it.
So the ring around the center, and the center is included. However, there are degrees, and so even in a grid form, there's one I saw, it was literally like 8x8 or something, and there are shades of neutral towards good, good towards chaos, those kind of intermediate steps.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of play in them if you so want. And this is why characters, even within a same general alignment, aren't identical characters, right?
Right, exactly.
So, don't be afraid to explore the betweens. Particularly with somebody who wants to act of their own accord. There's a lot of room for chaos, for inserting that into conflict.
Yeah, like I said, these are...
Like between Quen and Cortan, he chose to do something that made the relationship harder because of what he did, but he had his justification.
Yes, he said this is...
She had her justification for her point of view as well.
Right, he's like, this is what needs to be done, and then she's like, this is what needs to be done, but yet they're lawful good versus chaotic good, so...
Right. Motivations for a chaotic good character: universalism and self-direction.
Yes. I'd argue that these are most of the people that tend to be superheroes, because vigilantism generally plays a lot into being a superhero, and that's inherently unlawful. Now, of course, like Superman,
vigilantes, anti-heroes, but not all superheroes are chaotic.
Obviously, like Superman is lawful, but like there's a lot of
Captain America.
Yeah, and Captain America and such. Yeah.
Well,
except for in Civil War, where he literally breaks.
Well, no, but that's the thing, though. As I was about to say, he starts out as a lawful good character, but then he works his way towards questioning, is the law truly right?
Yeah, I think it's interesting.
Are they telling me, is what they're telling me really like the way to go, or should I explore my own avenue? And so even across the MCU and related comic book projects, he's been challenged, put through the ringer in that respect, and his alignment has inevitably kind of altered.
Well, in the same way, Iron Man started off as like, I'm doing this for me. I don't care what S.H.I.E.L.D. says. I don't care what the government says. This is my thing. I'm a showboat. I putting Stark on a big fat tower with the name shining bright. This is me. I'm Iron Man. Deal with it, bitch. And then And then...
You know. Well, even if you consider just the change in Tony Stark before he becomes Iron Man.
Right, exactly.
To when he has to make... when he's
and that's why it's consistent, yeah. Because, like, what happens...
when that action puts him in the suit, you know.
He learns the consequences of his actions. That's what drove him to be Iron Man, but that's what drove him further from going from chaotic good to more neutral good. I think both Captain America and Iron Man go into neutral good. Starting from opposite ends, though.
Right.
Because, like, by the end, Tony is all about, I gotta pay for my actions. This is what has to be done. I messed up. I gotta be held accountable for myself. He's aware of his own faults.
It feels natural. I love it. It's great.
It is.
They don't... I mean, like, seriously, I cannot... We talk about the MCU all the time on this podcast, but, like, seriously, over the long form, what they've been doing with these characters is so brilliant because it is directly affected by what they choose and what happens to them.
Well, like, I just think it's fascinating, like, they have these plans, but they also can... This is kind of how I write, too, but they can change them a little to suit things. Like, when Spider-Man came in, they put it in perfectly with Tony's arc. When Tony's like, I need to be held accountable. I need to figure out what I need to do. Oh, here's this kid.
So here's a kid
I can mentor him to be what I want to be, that I wasn't, but you can be.
What I wanted to be, you mean?
Yeah, what I want to be now is what I want this kid to be. It's not what I was, but he can be better than me. He doesn't have to go through what I did to get here. Yeah. They fit it in perfectly.
Better than me is the big one. Yeah.
It's great.
No, absolutely. I mean, he's a wonderful character in the MCU, which obviously has a lot of good movies. We talk about them probably quite a bit too much.
I watch other movies. I read books occasionally.
Okay.
If I want to read one that I read earlier, look at the last episode, Defining the Alignment System.
I was about to say, we will rip off from this.
From that
but anyway,
last episode.
Let's go ahead and move on from the good characters then to the lesser good characters, but not fully evil either. And those are the in-betweens, the neutrals.
Yes. These are a little bit more difficult, I think, just because it's kind of hard to define what's neutral and what's not. It's the world isn't black and white, but it's so easy to view it that way and convert, and therefore it's so easy to write it that way.
It is.
So,
but it's harder to, create shades
exactly
of what is right and wrong. I'm going to go ahead and read something from my notes here about neutral on both axes, both morally, that's on the good-evil slider, and ethically, which is on the law-chaos one. So just hear this out and see if it helps you with your own thoughts. Neutral people, morally neutral people, are only committed to those who have relationships with them.
Yes.
They won't kill innocent people, but they also won't make sacrifices on behalf of unfamiliar people. So those are morally neutral people.
Right.
Ethically neutral people have a normal respect for authority, law versus chaos. They respect order, but they aren't compelled to follow it.
Mm-hmm.
They're generally honest, but they can be tempted to deceive others.
Yes.
And so there's a lot of room for interpretation. There's a lot of room for adjustment. And that's why this alignment, this set of alignments is full of opportunities to challenge and grow your characters.
Right.
Obviously, people have motivations for whatever they are doing.
Mm-hmm.
And so trying to tap into that, to understand why they are zigging while the rest of the world is zagging, why they're swimming upstream against the current, whatever it is, there's room for that.
Yes.
So get into the head of your characters and figure out why are they going against the grain.
Yeah. And that's the fun part, honestly. Like, there's a lot of fun to be had with this. Like, I like writing neutral characters. In fact, for Megazoic, a lot of people think Anra is their favorite character, and she's a lawful neutral character.
We'll talk more about examples.
I keep bringing up examples. I'm getting ahead of myself.
Stop.
All right.
We'll stop doing it. So professional.
All right. So, yes. So, first off, I got lawful neutral. How do you write these judges, these juries, these super serious, straightforward cops.
The term is jurors, to be precise, but
right.
yes. I think the way to write them is that they have a questionable... They have questionable methods at times, but they are committed to what is stated as law.
Yes.
So, like,
yeah.
cops are... And not to get into police brutality stuffs, but obviously it's a thing. But, like, think about cops that have to fire their weapons in the line of duty.
Yes.
If they happen to kill somebody, that doesn't inherently make them evil. It just means that they're trying their best to uphold the law set for them to follow. And so, while their actions aren't always understandable, could even be questionable, there's conflict in, do they feel good about this? Do they really appreciate that they had to do what they did? They might be able to justify it, but it probably eats at them. And so there's a lot of potential for insecurity.
Yes. This is a director that I've read that really, really likes to write these kind of characters is Darren Aronofsky. He directed Black Swan, he directed Noah, he directed Requiem for a Dream, he directed all these kind of artsy sort of movies. It's kind of funny. Every so often, he's up and the running to do a superhero movie. I think he's interested in doing one. He was going to do the Wolverine. He was going to do Man of Steel, but for whatever reason, he just didn't do it. But he loves writing characters that have a purpose, they have a drive, and they go forth to do it. And how far do they go? It can sometimes consume them. It can drive them mad. They don't like what they're doing sometimes, but like this is what has to be done. Like
they can't stop because the wheels are already in motion.
Like in Noah, for instance, that he depicts Noah as this character who's driven by God to do this, and he commits bad things sometimes because that's what he thinks he's done. He gets a really bad relationship with his son because his son, he falls in love while he's running away from his family. He falls in love with this girl from the empire, the bad empires, right?
That they can't save.
Yeah, exactly. So he tries to take her along, but he lets her die, and his son never forgives him for it. And it drives him crazy. But that's what he said. This is what I have to do. So it's a really interesting sort of thing.
It is, and obviously, with neutral characters, the way that they get there doesn't always make sense to people who don't share the same ideas.
Mm-hmm.
So they're probably, not only are they questioning themselves, but they probably don't fit in terribly well with large social groups because they don't cleave one way or another, except to the law, except to what they're expected to do, what they're trying to do.
Right.
So, that's something that you can use in writing those characters.
I don't think I'd be very good at writing these type of characters because I don't know, I feel uncomfortable sometimes making characters do things, especially the main characters, because for me I want to make sure that we're root for these people, and sometimes it's difficult for me to know what to do that, but for other people it's interesting, and I get that. I get exactly why.
Well, I suppose that it depends how much you establish their motivations for it. Like, if somebody has to be killed, as long as there's a justifiable reason that won't damage the reputation among the audience, there's no reason you can't have that action happen. But if you don't explain it, then they might shy away from trusting or caring about this character because he'll just willfully off somebody for, next to no explicable reason.
These would be characters. I think the best way to write these kind of characters are make them someone you can root them for, and if they do questionable things, write it in a way that that the viewer or the reader can understand why they did it.
Yes.
Even if they might not agree with it, they understand.
They don't have to agree per se, because it might not be in that particular reader's capability to appreciate, but such that it is understood.
Yes.
In the context of why that character acted that way. Mm-hmm. So anybody can do it. It takes practice.
Yes,
of course.
It's interesting. This has gotten real serious. Here, hold on. I'm gonna enact the next segment. Matt picks a booger. No, I'm just kidding. For more on that,
we already ran that. For more on that, we're in the same episode, so we can't even reference it.
Wait, didn't we do that last episode? I don't.
No, we just did it this one because we were looking for a segment. Remember?
Oh, that's right. I don't remember. I'll find out in editing.
Oh
I believe
my
you, but
God.
also don't believe you.
Lawful neutral. Why is it the best alignment? They're reliable and honorable without like being overzealous.
Yes.
One way or another.
Sounds good.
Intriguing there.
All right. So shall we move on to
let's
the final
move
one
on
for
to
this
true
episode?
neutral. Yes, please. Which is true neutral.
So these guys.
Oh wait, sorry.
These guys.
Okay. Yep, go ahead.
These guys. I don't know how to write them. It's difficult. They're just animals, basically. They're just people who...
Well, I was about to make the joke. Why don't you just write animals? They're true neutral.
I'm struggling to...
Oh wait, you did already, and you put humans in dinosaur scales.
I have a character I think that follows with... I think for me personally, to write these characters, they're definitely side characters, and they're definitely ones that are in a group that just kind of tag along because
they're just kind of there.
They're just there. Yeah, I have characters I think that are like this. Like
they breathe space. They breathe into space, but they don't really
like if they weren't in this group, they would do nothing.
Well, they might not be missed is also possible, right. I suppose.
Or they might be. Some people might like
one thing
their
is interesting though. One thing that is interesting though. I apologize. I mentioned that I would read the work on motivations for this character. I skipped a couple. I'm not going to go back now.
Okay.
One thing about true neutral, though, that is fascinating, because this motivation thing is superimposed over the ring model, the circle model.
Yeah.
That true neutral is in the center. And it holds to form that literally any of the 10 motivations, as classified by this psychologist, Schwartz, could be possible.
Makes sense.
So, yeah, right, exactly. And so while it seems kind of confusing, it's actually kind of liberating as a writer, because you could literally have them do anything and it would work.
Well, I guess...
They're the ultimate sandbox character.
Well, I guess if they did an evil thing, the justification would be like, I didn't know it was evil, I was just doing whatever.
Or it could be for pleasure, like the one of the motivations is called hedonism.
Yeah, I was gonna say like something like that. Yeah.
It could be because they want to do it. It could be for seeking power. Yeah. Which is something that you don't always need unless you're trying to. It's more associated with evil anyway. Right. And so it could be any of the 10 motivations. I haven't read the 10 motivations. Go look it up yourself. I gave you the website already.
We're so
if
good.
They aren't mentioned here, there are others. I'll just leave it at that. True neutral characters. The thing that's great about them, though, they act instinctually. There's no prejudice or compulsion. They think about what they're going to do, and it makes sense for the moment, so they do it. But they didn't have to do it one way. They could do it any number of ways. And so, as I said, it's kind of liberating. No, it's not necessarily easy to write them. But, every character starts here until you choose a different alignment.
That's actually probably a good way to put it. Like, I think a lot of characters I write as true neutral, I end up writing that way on accident. They just are what they are.
I mean, here's the problem with true neutrals, though. They represent apathy, indifference, and, more than anything, a complete, utter lack of conviction. Yes. Because they aren't drifting between good and evil, they're in the middle. They aren't drifting between law or chaos. Excuse me, I'm saying this wrong. They are drifting freely between good, evil, law, chaos. They don't stay anywhere.
Yes. They are enigmas, aren't they?
They are. Thanks for using my terminology.
I actually forgot that was your terminology. I was just like, comment here.
That was the one I came up with. Not
well, good job.
The easy Damas.
Thank you.
I
must agree with it because I used it without even realizing it.
No, but anyway. However, one thing to keep in mind about true neutrals. They may not know if things are good or evil, follow law, or are, purport chaos, but they have a reason for it. True neutral characters view themselves as practical and realistic, both of which are desirable qualities. They make choices based on what seems sensible and possible. Not going too crazy, not getting too heavy-handed. They just do. Mm-hmm. For example, I quoted this in the first episode of the set, so go listen to episode 30 explaining the alignment system.
Ding!
Time 3 about the quote about animals. But here it is again. Not the quote, but just animals in general. Obviously, animals don't necessarily have the higher intelligence that humans are capable of.
Right.
They are excluded from the moral understanding of right or wrong. So everything they do is just done to survive, to be. Whether it's eating other animals, whether it's attacking humans that piss them off, whether it's doing things, it's not because they are inherently evil creatures or inherently good. They just are.
Right. That makes...
So, you know, these characters are all start in the center unless you direct them to a different place on the grid, on the ring, whatever model you prefer to look at. These characters exist.
Yes.
And from there, you choose if you want to move them through what they do, through what they, you know, experience over the course of your tale, or if they truly stay neutral.
Yes.
Which shows an utter lack of commitment and makes them, you know, not to be too heavy-handed, but it makes them an agent of chaos because you don't know if they'll act
even though they're not chaotic.
They're not as chaotic, but they're also unpredictable.
Yes. We will get to chaotic.
But their reasoning is sensible. However, speaking of chaotic, we'll do that next week.
Yes, well, this is it for this week. If you want more, wait a week. Or listen to them all at once. You know, when it's all over. Do what you do.
So, wait for the entire month to be over and them all to be uploaded so you can you go through straight.
I mean, that's basically. I mean, I don't know why. That's basically our old format. If you want to follow that, I guess good on you. But
but that's when we only had one release a month.
Yep, and if people are just so used to that they have to wait a month, even if there's new episodes available, then hopefully not everyone does that, because the whole reason why I'm doing this is trying to get more listeners.
Trying to get more listeners.
Right, so.
More listener interaction would be nice,
and
too.
Speaking
if you want
of
to get in touch
listeners,
with us. I had a segue. You tried forcing it on mine. Get out of here. Anyway.
I'm so tired. It's only been 2 episodes of recording this. I'm already tired. So we can do this. This is the first time we've attempted this. We can do this. Power through it.
Contact us at Matt D with 2 T's, Matt, at Matthew Donald Creator. If you have any questions for either co-host, please tell us which name so we don't.
It's MatthewDonaldCreator.com, by the way.
Did I not say that?
You just said at Matthew Donald Creator.
I could have sworn it. Whatever. Anyway, you can go through your own email service at that email address, which includes .com at the end, just to cover my bases. Or you can go through his website, use the Contact Us page.
Yep, and if you want to follow me personally, I'm at Matthew Donald Creator on Facebook, at Matthew Donald 64 on Twitter, and Matthew Donald 64 on Instagram. Why 64? Because 64 seconds is the average amount of time I can babble on about dinosaurs before someone falls asleep or punches me in the face and shouts, "Enough!
Enough!"
It's like, well, so speaking of Sign Raptor, speaking of Lystrosaurus, did you know that Lystrosaurus was actually one of the most common...
Hey, this is where 2 twits talk about writing and usually quite often dinosaurs and superheroes. We'll have more next week about the alignment system, but until then, I'm Matt David.
I'm Matt Donald. See you next week. Get out of here,
Thanks for listening.
Guys.
Keep writing.
Bye.
The